Chopper Attack. It's a video game. It's not very good, but I love it anyway. Let's find out why. What makes Chopper Attack special? Not a lot. Let's start off with why I want to talk about Chopper Attack. There's a few reasons, actually. First of all, there's almost no videos about it at all on YouTube. It wasn't very popular and didn't get a lot of advertising, and as far as I can tell, it didn't really sell particularly well. Somehow as a kid, I ended up with a copy. So there's my obvious bias. I played it as a kid and never really made it past the third or so level, but I did still enjoy what I played. It was developed by a company called Sega, which released 5 games total for the Nintendo 64. Chopper Attack was the only game developed by Sega to make it out of Japan, though. The Japanese exclusive games they released are Eiko no St. Andrews, or the St. Andrews Old Course, the first golf game released for the Nintendo 64, Saikyo Habu Shogi, a Nintendo 64 launch title which is a digital version of Shogi, sometimes called Japanese chess, Marita Shogi 64, a follow-up to Saikyo Habu Shogi, which is notable for having a built-in dial-up modem which allowed online play across Japan, and finally, Tetris 64, which featured a biosensor which allowed the game to react to players' stress levels. Sega also had 2 cancelled games that we know about, Ikezuchi no Gotoku, which appears to be a digital version of Go. Go is another traditional Japanese tabletop game, which will be somewhat familiar if you've ever played Othello. The only evidence of this game is a single screenshot from a magazine. The other cancelled game is Rev Limit, a sim racer designed for the 64DD, as well as the Alex 64, an arcade board Sega developed based on the Nintendo 64 hardware. A seemingly late-stage prototype was purchased at auction in 2016, but no ROM has shown up online yet, and apparently the chances of it ever showing up are pretty low. Back to Chopper Attack. Initially released in Japan on November 28, 1997, it was self-published there by Sega. When it arrived in the United States on June 17, 1998, Midway Games published it. And when it finally released in the EU on September 1, 1998, it was GT Interactive who handled publishing duty. I couldn't find any exact pricing data, but it's pretty safe to assume that it originally cost between $50 and $60 in the US. In today's money, that's about $85 to $100. I did find out the game was 6,980 yen on release in Japan, which is closer to $70. Nowadays in the US it goes for about $10. It was released everywhere as a Nintendo 64 exclusive and features no multiplayer modes. The game saves with the cartridge and does support the Nintendo 64's Rumble Pack. As with all games of this era, let's start with the manual so we can understand the world we're stepping into. Classified, top secret. A growing terrorist group called Guren no Kiba is using its various factions all over the world to commit subversive activities on a large scale worldwide. They've acquired dangerous weaponry by way of thievery, kidnapped American scientists, and have their own proprietary technologies. Their ultimate goal is to create an android soldier that will most likely make the Guren no Kiba unstoppable. You are part of a special group of skilled international special forces with one objective: destroy the Guren no Kiba. Because their main headquarters are located in deep canyons, you will be outfitted with several powerful prototype choppers that include a wide array of weaponry. It's up to you. Take them out. So, that's why we're flying choppers and blowing stuff up. So let's get to it. Upon first starting the game, you'll be brought to a start screen followed by a main menu. You might want to check out the options screen before starting. Here you'll be able to adjust your controls, and after you beat the game once, your difficulty level. You'll also be able to disable the background music and sound effects if you really want to. You can also wipe out your save data. After returning to the main screen, you can go into training to get your bearings or just launch right into the game. Honestly, the first level is pretty straightforward, so you should probably just hop in. You'll select your stage to start with, followed by your choice of 8 different pilots and choppers. You can check each chopper's stats with the L button. After you beat the game on normal mode, you'll unlock the King IO. Beating the game on expert settings unlocks the Stingray. In order to use the choppers you've unlocked, you have to hold down the R button while selecting the stage. Never mind the fact that I found out about unlocking the choppers through a ton of different places online. In order to figure out how to access them, I had to search around online using the Japanese name of the game, with the words Game Guide. I also translated it to Japanese, and then translating the websites I found back into English. So here's the info for you, a lot easier way to find. Hold R when you select the level. After selecting your craft, you'll receive a mission briefing from the guy who'll probably tell you to
be a wild man.
You'll be shown a map of the level, and you'll get to buy some weapons. This is one of the neater parts of the game. You can select from 7 different weapons, and different choppers can carry different amounts of these. Some choppers only carry 2, some carry 4. You can buy whatever you need to complete your mission, assuming you can afford it. I always suggest rockets, because even though they aren't guided, they're affordable and powerful if you can get used to them. At the end of the mission, you'll sell whatever you have left at half the value, so be careful how much you buy. If you end up buying too much, you're gonna lose money. You also have a machine gun with unlimited ammo, which comes in handy. Now then, we're finally ready to actually play. Each mission is gonna have its own objectives, and you're gonna start somewhere on the map. The HUD is pretty straightforward. One of the first things you'll notice is a huge fuel gauge at the bottom of the screen. This thing is one of the more annoying parts of the game, as far as I'm concerned. You start each mission with a full fuel tank, and you'll have to keep an eye on it throughout the entire mission. There's a way to get more fuel, but it's completely luck-based. Your health is in the top right, and it's labeled shield. You can move around using the control stick, but there's no way to adjust your elevation. It feels a bit odd and limiting, honestly, but it keeps you in bounds on the map. As you approach hills and mountains, you'll automatically ascend and descend. Combat is fun and straightforward. You'll encounter a ton of different kinds of choppers and attack planes, as well as tanks and soldiers on the ground. Any enemies you don't defeat during the mission carry over to the next, so it can be worth it to take out as many enemies as possible. Just make sure not to run out of fuel in the process. Your minimap in the bottom right will show where you are and where the targets are. Your radar in the bottom left will alert you to enemies and landmarks nearby. It's always worth it to blow up buildings in Chopper Attack. They usually contain an item that'll come in handy. Sometimes it's extra fuel or shield, sometimes it's a machine gun upgrade. Sometimes it's extra cash that can be used for weapons in the next level. Sometimes, though, it's a trap, so you gotta be careful. If you don't make it away fast enough, you'll probably take some damage. While you're playing, you'll be treated to a soundtrack that, while I can't say is fantastic or moving, I can say it suits the mood of the game and does its best to keep your energy up. I enjoy it, and then again it's also super nostalgic for me, so your mileage may vary there. The sound effects aren't anything special, honestly, but they do a good job. It's about as well as you can expect from the good old N64 sound chip. Not too punchy, they get the job done. The graphics are pretty good for the time, though the maps suffer a little bit from simple textures and suffer a lot from the N64's penchant for fog. Draw distances could be a lot better here, to say the least. Choppers themselves, though, are well detailed and generally nice to look at. For some context on how the game was received at release, let's look at some old reviews. The overall average of the scores Chopper Attack received is somewhere around 54-55%. The highest score we have a record of is about 81%, and the lowest score we have a record of is right around 50%. If we take a look at Edge Magazine, they had a lot of good things to say about the difficulty level of the game, as well as the weapons that you get to use in it. They were super critical of the controls as well as the graphics of the game, though. If we hop over to GameFan magazine, we'll see that there's a lot of criticism of the speed of the game. However, the reviewers over here seem to really like the way the game looks. GamePro claims that it's a case study of unrealized potential, starting with the controls, of course, while also leveling heavy criticism at the graphics and the sound. I'm not the only person that noticed how much fog there is in this game. And of course, over at Nintendo Power, they had a lot of great things to say about the game, but they still gave it a 6.6 out of 10. So I guess at the end of the day, yeah, the game is middle of the road. What about cheats and Easter eggs? Well, from the start menu, if you press C up 7 times, you can access a level select with everything unlocked. There's also a debug menu you can get into by holding Z on the start screen and pressing right, left, up, down, A, B, and start at the same time. This is pretty cool because you can do all sorts of things in here. If you have a Game Shark, you can access an even cooler debug menu. I also discovered a few Easter eggs that I couldn't find mentioned anywhere online. There's a hidden S on the last level. It looks like a small blue bump on the ground until you shoot it, but as you continue to shoot it, it raises out of the ground and becomes the S from the Sega logo. Also, if you pay attention to the music on the last level, you'll hear someone saying Wild Choppers, which is the original Japanese title of the game. Alright, let's wrap this up. Is it worth playing? Probably not for $50, but I'd say for $10 it's a fun game that you can beat in an afternoon. Once you beat it on normal, you can easily come back and go for it again on expert. Plus, with all the options of different choppers and weapons to take into each level, you can really get your time and money out of it if you want. If you want to play it today, you can still grab a cart from a used game shop, otherwise it's Emulator City for you. But if you can find it for a decent price, I'd say go for it. Hey, thanks for watching this video. I know it's not the highest production value, and frankly, it's my first attempt at making something like this, so I really appreciate you watching the whole thing. My friends and I stream on Twitch a few times a week. We also have a Facebook page and a Discord server. If you want to check out those, they're down in the description below. But thanks again. If you like what you saw, go ahead and drop a subscribe, or a like, or whatever the other things you can do on YouTube are. I'd be glad to talk to you in the comments if you got anything you want to contribute. Thanks again, and have a good one.